There, wanted to show you how to do this scrolling background for a spritKit game. It adds a lot of realism to your game, and especially when you start stacking multiple scrolling backgrounds, you get a nice like 3D effect. So we have one in there right now, and you can see it moving. This is really just the same image made twice, and it's just moving to the left over the time that I have told it to. And you don't see any gap because there are two images. So we're going to add a second one and show you how this works. They're basically the exact same setup process. I've made the images in Xcode, so you should start doing is saving all these so you could reference them maybe later. Maybe one day you are going to make another game, and that way you have these images set up properly. The sizing is important, so make sure you can pull up some sample images and check the sizes of them and try to make one that's comparable that you know will work and fit. So you have that old Flappy Bird game, you can open some of those images and look at the size and compare them. So after it's done, you're going to export those files. Both of my hills and sky pics have been exported, and I've dragged them into my assets folder. So if you look at your assets folder, we have hills and we have sky here. If I go back to my game scene file, you'll see I have a create sky function. Let's scroll down to that and kind of talk about it, and then we'll make a new one for the ground or for the hills. So if you look here, first thing is you're making a texture variable that's setting the image that we just dragged into our assets folder. Then what we're doing is we're creating a loop that's going to happen twice. So for I, that's my variable name, in 0.1, that means it's going to go through the first time with 0, it's going to go through the second time with 1. So this will happen 2 times. And this is the reason we're doing this is to create 2 images so that when we move one from left to right, the next one takes its place and you don't see any gap. If you use one, you may see a little gap when that image resets. I'm going to apply the texture to an actual spritKit node right here. This is changing my stacking order, so we want it to either sit in front or behind something. We can change the Z position. The anchor point is where the reference for the image would be. So bottom left corner would be CG point 0. So that just determines where you're going to set the image from. The position is where the image is actually located. So this is where you're going to see those 2 images stacked together. And I'll explain this step a little bit more when we actually fill in the next function. We're adding it as a child, so it actually gets added to the view. And then these next few steps will determine how the image is moving from left to right. And the most important thing is your duration, how long it's going to take to move where you told it to go. We're going to run the action, and that's what creates the sky. So obviously this is called, and then we make this. So I'm going to go ahead and just retype. Actually, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this, because I know it's going to be almost exactly the same. I'm going to copy this function, and I'm going to change the name of this function to create hills. And then I'm going to show you something really cool that will change a bunch of words for you at the same time. So I have this sky texture, and you'll see sky texture is referenced a ton of times within my scope here. So I want to change all of the words from sky texture to hill texture because I already have this other one called sky texture. This is going to be my new function called create hills. And what's really cool is if you double click on a word, a little arrow should pop up next to it, and you can click and say edit all in scope, and it will change everything from that point on. So I can type the words hill texture, and you'll see all of my old references to sky texture are changing. So everything in the scope is changing. The image is going to be a different one. It's going to be hills. I'm creating a loop, so I say for I in 0.1. That just tells it how many times. If I did 3, it would happen 4 times. So that number just determines how many times you're going to create it. We know we just needed to create 2. I'm going to change skypick also to a new variable name, and I'm going to call it hillpick because now I'm using the hill picture. The hill texture has already been replaced. My Z position will need to come in front of the old blue background. So my old blue background, the Z position was 30. I want it to be in front of the blue sky, so I'm going to change it to -20. The anchor point can stay the same. We want to set the anchor point to the bottom left corner of the image. The position. So here's the part where this part's really important, where your actual image is going to be located when you first run the program or when it's created or added to the view. And this will change each time it goes through the loop because I'm using I, my variable I, to determine where this position is going to be. So the first time it goes through, I is 0. So what we're doing is basically setting this to the bottom right corner of the screen. So we're figuring out what the size of the hill is and timesing it by 0 and subtracting it by 0 to determine that original position. The next one will be multiplied by 1 so that it gets stacked directly to the right of that image. So you're basically figuring out the size of the hill, and every time it goes through, the first time it's going to be 0, so it's starting right in the bottom left corner. The second time it's going to be stacked just to the right of it because of the way I set up this X position coordinate. 100 is where it is top to bottom. So I know that my hill that I created up here was 100 tall, and it's at the very bottom of the screen. So if I put this at 100, it's going to be right butting up to where the ground was created. I'm adding the hill pick. And now here are my actions that I'm going to use to actually put this into motion. So this SK action, move by X, so I'm going to move along the X coordinate. You can do it by Y if you're going up and down. I'm moving it the size of the hill width. So whatever that is, it's going to move it that far in 10 seconds. It's not moving up or down with the Y value, it's just moving left to right, move by X. I'm resetting it to where it was originally, and then I'm repeating this action over and over. So I'm moving, resetting, and I'm looping that over and over, and I'm running that. So this won't happen until I call it. You'll see right now I have the same duration. I'll run it once like that, and then I'll change it for you to see the difference. But I have to call my function, create hills. And so let's run it with the hills. There's my hills. Now it looks okay, but these are moving at the exact same speed. It looks even cooler if you change the speed up. So I'm going to slow down my hills so that it's moving at a different pace than the sky. I'm going to put this at, let's put it at 4. And so now let's run it and you can see the difference. So now the hills are moving at a faster pace than the background. Gives kind of a cool effect. And obviously those can be changed. You can move them to whatever you'd like. Now we're ready to start animating our guy and having some physics take place. So good luck with the scrolling background.